Ladies and gentlemen, it's your boy Toph. It's the moment you've all been waiting for. It's Dark Souls, a full deep dive playthrough. We're taking a holistic approach. If there's an item description, if there's a crumb of lore on a napkin in the corner of a room, we're going to be talking about it. This is my favorite game of all time. It's going to be a relaxing, stress free, potentially ASMR core playthrough. So you need something delicious to drink, potentially a tasty snack, and a cozy blanket because we're going to be chillaxing our way through this game. We're going to do a fresh save file. So here we go. Obviously, the only acceptable name for this character. Okay, here we go. So I do want to make it clear, just from the word go, when I say holistic, and I mean thorough, I can't stress enough that we're going to be slow rolling this. We're probably going to spend like 10 minutes just in the character creation screen. So, from the word go, Dark Souls is very happy to give you lore. And the way it does it, many item descriptions or just descriptions of just characters or equipment, items in general, will oftentimes have a description that has lore value, but then will also explain a game mechanic. And these synergize together to expand on the lore. So here we go. Fearless warrior, weapon expert, high strength, dexterity. So fearless warrior, that's just flavor. Weapon expert. Now, if you're coming at this game from, say you used to play World of Warcraft or lots of other just like fantasy games where you have classes that are very strict in what you can or cannot do. In a lot of games, if you play a paladin or you play a warlock, there are things that they might start in similar places, but gradually they just get further and further apart to the point that at end game, a warlock can do 100 things that a paladin could never do, and vice versa. So in the description of this class, warrior, it says a weapon expert. Now, coming from other fantasy games, you might think that that means that you're, this character starts with the ability to use many weapons. Not really. So one of the things that makes the class system of Souls games unique is that all of these classes, so if you take a look at the stats in the bottom left corner of the screen, you'll notice that all these characters have different stats, but you don't see anything different apart from that. So all that changes when you change your class is what the starting gear is and what the starting stats is. That's important because that means that in like other games where you have your columns, where each class is in a specific column filling a certain role, those pillars don't exist in the Souls series. Your class is just a starting point. It might be geared towards, a warrior might be geared towards using multiple weapons the same way a sorcerer might be geared towards using sorceries. But that is not, you are not confined to that, and that's what gives the class system so much flexibility. That at the 100-hour mark, it doesn't matter what class you started as, your build is whatever you really wanted it to be. So when it says weapon expert, and then so that's the lore, weapon expert, here's the game, high strength and dexterity. Most weapons, as in melee weapons, either require strength or they require dexterity. So that's the gamification of the lore that your character is a weapon expert. So knight, low ranking knight, high HP, solid armor, not easily toppled. So not easily toppled is a reference to poise. Now, poise is a system that we'll get into explaining the intricacies of it later. Essentially, it really does mean, being toppled or knocked out of a guard. And poise is something that only comes from armor. So like I said, if this were a different fantasy game, the knight would have the special ability that they can't be toppled easily. But that's not how this game works. Everyone really is just the same. If you remove everyone's equipment and you make everyone's stats the same, you'd be the same, which is different from a lot of other fantasy games. Wanderer, Scimitar, High Dexterity. So the classes will all give a little bit of flavor text, talk about what they have, and then give you like their main stat, kind of. Guilt-ridden thief. This is probably, I think this is my favorite of the little descriptions because it's already given you just a little crumb of lore that's just adds to the role-playing aspect of it. Guilt-ridden thief. High critical hits. So again, in the gameplay side of it, the thief doesn't have a higher chance of scoring crits, but they're referring to this weapon. The bandit's knife has higher critical damage. And this is important, the thief says has master key. So we're going to choose our class. Here's more lore. Sorcerer of Vinheim Dragon School. Casts soul sorceries. Swamp Pyromancer. Casts fire spells and wields a hand axe. Cleric on Pilgrimage. Wields a mace and casts healing miracles. Unclothed Enigma. Only armed with club and old plank shield. So many people who are creating a character in this game will think that this one, Deprived, is like a joke class because you start with nothing. But believe it or not, Deprived is one of the best classes you can choose as a beginner, and here's why. If you look at the stats in the bottom left, across the board, solid 11s in everything. What does that mean? It means that you're flexible. You can, depending on where you go in the world, what you find, what equipment you find, you can prioritize anything. You can take this character anywhere and it's easier. Like if you were to make a pyromancer, but you decided 5 hours in, I really just want to use like rapiers and dex weapons. You're gonna have a harder time with it because you're only starting at a 9. Whereas with Deprived, everything is even across the board. It's very easy for you to go into something specific. So this is actually a class that I would recommend to people who are playing it for the first time. Furthermore, because you have no gear, every crappy piece of gear that you find actually has a lot of value. In the early areas of the game, a lot of the enemies will drop kind of bad armor, like compared to what almost everyone else starts with, it's not very good. But as a Deprived, you're throwing that bad boy on in a heartbeat because anything's better than nothing. Okay, so the class we're going to start with is Pyromancer. Swamp Pyromancer casts fire spells and wields a hand axe. Now, there's a couple reasons we're going to be picking this class. One, the level. So this is the only class that starts at level 1, and what that means is that it takes the least amount of experience, or in this game, souls, to start going in the direction you want. Furthermore, it just gives us the lowest possible start, which I feel gives the game the most natural curve of difficulty for leveling up and how much everything costs. Also, pyromancy is very important in this world. The idea of fire spells, so we're going to pick this class for the lore significance. So in this game, every character you create can choose a starting gift. So it's interesting that you can just choose none if you want to forsake it. Good role-playing opportunity there. A lot of these items are items that you can just find naturally in the game, so they're not that valuable. Because the Goddess's Blessing, Black Firebomb, Humanities, Binoculars, you can find those all in the game relatively early too, so it's kind of a waste to choose them. So Divine Holy Water fully restores HP and status. That's valuable, but it's consumable, so it's not as valuable. Black Firebomb explodes upon impact when thrown, more deadly than STD bomb. STD is short for standard. Binoculars is an item you can find early in the game, so it, just like a lot of these other ones, kind of a waste to pick. Pendant. Trinket, no effect, but fond memories comfort travelers. I'm gonna put a big old asterisk right here because we're gonna swing back around in like 40 hours to talk about this. Master Key opens any basic lock, initial equipment for Thief. Now, if you remember, the Thief class starts with this. So the Thief essentially gets one free gift in the Master Key and they can choose something else. Tiny Beans Ring. Special tribal ring grants small increase to HP. Now, when I first played this game, way back when it came out, it was actually mistranslated and said it gradually restored HP. That's thankfully been fixed in this remastered version. And it just shows you that it's actually even more worthless than that. If it gradually restored HP, that would have some actual use. The amount of HP it gives you, I think, is like 10 health, which is worthless. Finally, there's the Old Witch's Ring, a gift from a witch. Ancient ring with no obvious effect. Just like choosing a pyromancer, we're going to be picking this gift because of the lore significance. And again, like, get used to me using this phrase. We're going to circle back on this in like 30 hours, and I'll explain the significance of that. Okay, this is another thing here in the character creation screen that really made me sit up, was that we were getting bits of lore just in the different faces. So obviously something like commoner, very average commoner face. Delta, commonly seen face in the five-finger delta. Astora noble, handsome face of the refined, common in Astora. Dragon scholar, intelligent, sharp lines, but scholarly looks invite insult. Thorland cleric, look common in Thorland, known for its stalwart clerics. Jubilant Katarina, jovial features of Katarina, known for festivity and drink. Dubious Kareem, ominous features associated with the Earl of Kareem. Classic Xena, thoughtful, mature face, common in historical Xena. Eerie Great Swamp. Great Swamp heretics face prejudice for their atypical looks. This one always makes me sad. Face from a distant eastern land of almond eyes and thin lips. So, throughout the game, we constantly hear about Astora, scholars Thurland, Katarina, Kareem, and the Great Swamp. So it's great that, you can totally see another game just like this where the faces would be face 1, face 2, face 3, so on and so forth. You know what I mean? They actually put effort and thought into what do the people look like in these important locations in this world, and what do people think about the way people look in this part of the world. Intelligent, sharp lines, scholarly looks, invite insult. It's amazing. And this is what, when people talk about the little things in this game, that's what people refer. Neatly trimmed as the old nobility. Love it. So there's actually some interesting lore in the hair color too. So most of these are just basic descriptions. Dark blue hair, common in Kareem. Gray, common in northern Katarina. Gold, beloved by certain members of nobility. Silver, considered antiquated in these times. Dark purple, rare color of a near extinct race. Red, very rare. This one is the one that caught my eye. Dark purple hair and eyes, rare color of a near extinct race. Okay, here we go. So this is the character that we're going to be using, and We're about to start, and we're going to have a pretty significant opening cutscene. It's going to throw a lot at you, and don't worry, we're going to go in detail talking about every little facet of that. You should know the expression by now. In time, we will get to talking about every single little detail, so here we go.
In the age of ancients, the world was unformed, shrouded by fog. A land of grey crags, arch trees, and everlasting dragons. But then there was fire, and with fire came disparity. Heat and cold, life and death, and of course, light and dark. Then from the dark they came and found the souls of lords within the flame. Nito, the first of the dead. The Witch of Izalith and her daughters of Chaos. Gwyn, the Lord of Sunlight, and his faithful knights. And the furtive pygmy, so easily forgotten. With the strength of lords, they challenged the dragons. Gwyn's mighty bolts peeled apart their stone scales. The witches weaved great firestorms. Nito unleashed a miasma of death and disease. And Seath the Scaleless betrayed his own, and the dragons were no more. Thus began the Age of Fire. But soon the flames will fade, and only dark will remain. Even now, there are only embers. And man sees not light, but only endless nights. And amongst the living are seen carriers of the accursed dark sign. Yes, indeed. The dark sign brands the undead. And in this land, the undead are corralled and led to the north. Where they are locked away to await the end of the world. your fate.
All right. So that's one heck of an opening cinematic. It sets up a lot. It gives us the history of the entire world and then just throws us in. But for starters, we have no idea who that was, but he just threw in this corpse that had this on it. Key to the dungeon of the Undead Asylum to the north. A mysterious knight, without saying a word, shoved a corpse down into the cell, and on its person was its key. Who was this knight, and what was his purpose? There may be no answers, but one must still forge. So, in our inventory, we can look at the descriptions of everything from ammo to weapons, spells, keys, and items. And we don't have a lot because we just started the game, but we can take a look at what we have on our person. The dark sign. The dark sign signifies an accursed undead. Those branded with it are reborn after death, but will one day lose their mind and go hollow. Death triggers the dark sign, which returns its bearer to the last bonfire rested at, but at the cost of all humanity and souls. And we even have cool descriptions of the equipment that we have on. Hood worn by pyromancers of the Great Swamp. Though it appears tattered, it is actually quite strong. Their attire offers substantial protection against poison, fire, and other forces of nature out in the hinterlands where they were driven. Nice little hint as to the lore when it comes to the pyromancers. We'll see later on that pyromancers aren't exactly the most welcomed people in Lordran. Boots made of thick leather. The boots of the pyromancers are incredibly tough on account of the rugged grasslands and treacherous swamps they must traverse. Their souls are nearly impenetrable. Old ring from an old witch, engraved minutely with indecipherable script. Seemingly useless. So, for this playthrough, obviously I've played this game dozens of times and spent hundreds of hours, but in order to give the playthrough a form of structure, I won't be jumping ahead. So if something comes up, unless we have the item, unless we talk to the person, I will act like I don't know what's coming. That way, if anyone is watching this that has never played these games themselves, they can get an idea for what it was like to experience this. I'll simply just be a guiding hand, helping to connect the dots as we play through. So here we go. We have the key to escape. Who knows how long we've been here? Judging by the state of us, may have been a hot minute. Okay. So this functions as the tutorial area of the game, and this is your first experience with the message system. Camera controls. So in Dark Souls, when you play online, there's the ability to write and read messages that other players leave. Now, I play offline for multiple reasons. The biggest one is that when you play online, the whole world gets littered with these messages, and it can detract from the beauty of the art design and the scenery and stuff like that. But the developers were pretty clever, And they use this message system that they included as the tutorials. So rather than having some third-party character just, shout stuff like, hey, use the right stick to control the camera, they have an in-universe explanation for it. That, oh, this is a tip written by another person, another undead, to help you. As you can see, these people are losing their marbles. Or have maybe already lost them completely. And we even got a person here who met with a rather unfortunate fate. Looks like he was thrown or smashed straight through these bars. And what could have done that? Something like that. And we'll be back to see him later, don't worry. If you look as we walk through these halls, you can see just the walls are crumbling. The state is clearly in a state of disrepair. Water has just started to pool in this little recess in the floor. Rest at bonfire, recover HP. So this is the first of many bonfires that we're going to find in this game. If we look, you see that it's bones that serve as the kindling for it, and it burns perpetually. We saw that demon stomping around below, and we can still hear those footsteps. Your character, by the way, opens doors like Aragorn does in Lord of the Rings. Very dramatic. Get away! So many players, when they first come in here, meet with a terrible death. You gotta think on your feet in this game. And that's your first experience with that. Because right now, all we have is this sorry excuse for a sword, which definitely wouldn't do enough damage to beat something that big. And look at that, we have another bonfire. And just like that message said, if you look in the top left, you can see our HP. Anytime you rest at a bonfire, you get all your health back. Get your shield. I love the urgency of this message that it has the exclamation mark. And why does it have an exclamation mark? Because there's someone shooting arrows at us. Okay. So this is you have your general browse and use items screen, which is where you can look at everything your character's holding. This is your equipment screen, which kind of gives you the layout of everything that you're using, not just what you're carrying. So this top left is your right hand. So you have the main thing you have equipped, and then something you can swap it with, a hot swap. Left hand, your items, arrows, and then bolts for crossbows. Your equipment, which is always head, torso, hands, and legs. And then your character can equip 2 rings at a time. So we've equipped the shield, but it's not looking so hot. It's not even a full circle. These tutorials just tell you about using your how to equip stuff and how to use your shield. So we're gonna see here, if you look at my health, it went down a tiny little bit. We're gonna pick this up, which is our trusty hand axe. This is actually a good time to look at weapon stats. So, like I said, everything has a description. Where you look at this hilt, and it says, the hilt of this lost sword was found discarded in the Undead Asylum. Only slightly better than one's bare hands, and not recommended for extensive use. Be certain to find a replacement quickly. That's a good idea. Hand axe. Small hand axe appears identical to a lumberjack's tool, but has an ideal weight and strength and is easy to handle. One wrong swing leaves the wielder wide open, so timing and proximity to the enemy must be judged carefully. I think I hear him walking over here. Okay. If you look... Are you running again? If you look at my health, blocking these arrows, I still take some damage. And let me explain why. So, for the shield stats, here we go. In this center column, we can see damage reduction. And for physical, it says 65. So what that means is if an attack does 100 physical damage, I'll block 65 of it. Now 65% is a lot better than 0%, which is if you didn't block anything at all. But you can see that for a shield, it's only marginally better than just blocking with the hand axe itself. So there's going to be far better shields that we'll find that will serve the purpose of defending us better. And this is showing what I said about how you can have 2 items in each hand slot. So if I were to equip the hand axe in that first position, hitting right on the D-pad would swap to the sword. That'll become more important later once we have better stats so that we can equip more stuff at one time. And this third panel here in the menu is actually our status screen, which can show you everything there is to know about our character. So we start with, you just have your name, a covenant, that's something that we'll get to later, level, how many souls we have, and then you can see all of our stats. So the thing that will help us equip more, as in like carry an off weapon in our hands, our extra hand slots, is endurance. Parameter determining stamina, equipment load, and resistance to bleeding. So that's a very valuable one. All of these stats over here, they're not as important early on because you don't need to know the intricacies of them, but we will go over those in time once they come up. This white light is something that will happen often in the game just as you're going through a level. All it is it's just kind of a little bit of a loading screen. Up until we cross that, since there was no way to be here other than going through that light, the game wasn't bothering to load this. Now obviously as we were coming up this long tunnel, it probably started to do that, but that's just a way that developers can let you play through the game without having to suffer through a loading screen at the end of the hallway. They use that light to kind of section off parts of the level. That way you can have a seamless playing experience. You can see an item on that corpse there, but unfortunately our character's not quite able to leap up or clamber up these steps. So that's something we'll just have to come back for later. Backstep and roll. So the idea of teaching the player how to do this stuff through messages on the ground, it's executed very, very well. It's easier for the player to learn a rather large moveset if you give it to them in little pieces at a time. If you just throw the player in and bombard them with all this stuff back to back, it would be easy for the player to kind of forget little things or misremember or not see the importance of them. By putting a good bit of distance and just little bits of walking between the messages, it allows everything you learn to really sink in. Okay. So when we go down here, open this gate, and we're wondering where does this take us? It takes us back to the courtyard with the first bonfire. So this is a big moment in the level design of Dark Souls, because this is a trick that Dark Souls will use over and over and over again, where you will unlock shortcuts. So we've been progressing through this level, and we made it back to where we started. So we don't feel like we're getting lost. We, in fact, now have an even better understanding of where we've gone because we know where we've been. Take a look in here. You can actually see that knight from before. It looks like he's been trapped too. But it doesn't look like there's a way for us to get in there. That's the first real ambush in Dark Souls, and it's a rite of passage to get absolutely dumpstered on by that boulder. And we saw it actually even broke a hole in the wall. There's no way through there, so we're gonna have to go in there now. We might even get to talk to the knight. So we can see the boulder absolutely tore that wall to pieces. Now we can talk to the guy that helped us escape.
Oh, you. You're no hollow. Hmm? Thank goodness. I'm done for, I'm afraid. I'll die soon, then lose my sanity. I wish to ask something of you. You and I, we're both undead. Hear me out, will you? Regrettably, I have failed in my mission, but perhaps you can keep the torch lit. There is an old saying in my family, "Thou who art undead art chosen, and thine exodus from the undead asylum maketh pilgrimage to the land of ancient lords. When thou ringeth the bell of awakening, the fate of the undead thou shalt know." Well, now you know, and I can die with hope in my heart. Oh, one more thing. Here, take this. An Estus flask, an undead favorite. Oh, and this. Now I must bid farewell. I would hate to harm you after death. So go now, and thank you.
So we got our first bit of call to action, our line of okay, what do we even need to do here in this world? They said that there was an old saying in his family, a prophecy, something about ringing a bell. We need to learn the fate of the undead, and seeing as how we are undead, and that's the only lead we got, seems like that's what we need to do. So that's your first goal in this game. It's kind of a mystery. Don't know exactly why, and he doesn't seem to really know either. All we know is that that's what we're supposed to do, ring a bell. As we step out here, heard that sound, and we got some souls from it. It looks like he passed away. So he had a mission. He's failed. But he gave the mission to us, so it's up to us to keep the torch lit. No pressure. So this mechanic right here, two-handing your right-handed weapon, is actually very important. What it does is it increases the damage you do, and it reduces the strength requirements for the weapon. So if we look here, in this, we can see that it takes 8 strength to wield this weapon. When you two-hand it, you divide the requirements for the strength requirement in half. So two-handing a strength weapon, it can allow you to use a weapon you're not strong enough if you two-hand it. That can become pretty important later when we get to some weapons that have very high strength requirements. So resting at bonfire revives enemies. There's not a whole lot of lore for that. That really is just a gameplay consideration. Pyromancy flame. That's something really, really important. I'm just going to clear these enemies before I dive into that description. Ooh. The jumping attack is always kind of finicky to pull off in this game. There we go. I got it. It requires you to flick the stick forward and press RT at the same time. It's a little finicky sometimes. Let's take a look at this. Pyromancy flame. Flame medium used by Great Swamp pyromancers. Pyromancers arouse this flame to produce various fire arts. Equip Pyromancer flame to produce pyromancy. Attune pyromancies from a scroll at bonfire. Most pyromancies have limited number of uses. We got a little bit of lore there. That is essentially, this is what a pyromancer's weapon is. It's literally a flame that they excite to cast certain pyromancies. So, right bumper behind an enemy is a critical hit or a backstab. LT is a parry, repel an enemy attack, and after parrying, right bumper is riposte or a riposetti. Let's see if I still got it. Oh, I still got it. No big deal. Big Toph pulling off riposettis like it's just another Tuesday. That's actually pretty rare for him to drop an item like that. But he dropped a good weapon, but unfortunately we can't use it because our dex is too low. Widely used standard straight sword, only matched in ubiquity by the short sword. An accessible sword which inflicts consistent regular damage and high slash damage, making it applicable to a variety of situations. This is, believe it or not, the longsword is a very good weapon. But it shows you just how at a disadvantage the pyromancer is by being level 1, that our dexterity is only 9. We can't even use the normal sword, and it says it right there, unable to wield this weapon effectively with present stats. So it looks like I'm swinging it just fine, but you can see that red X in the item pane in the bottom left shows that you don't meet the requirements. And if you look here, you can see on the right column, right weapon slot 1, it's only doing 31 damage. I suppose if we use our axe, because we have the stats to use it properly, it does 86. So this tip right here, right bumper while falling, is a plunging attack. That's the plunging attack. It does a lot of damage, but you need to be in a falling state when you press right bumper to use it. There's actually it's a glitch, it's unintended. A way for you to do even more damage while falling is if you do that jumping attack I was trying to do earlier off the ledge. You will not only land a plunging attack, but you'll do the damage from a jumping attack as well. And we're going to see exactly why I just told you about that right here as we traverse this white light. So the white light hides loading screens, but another thing it also does, which is slightly more ominous, is a white light is usually what you have to cross before fighting a boss. As you can see, we did an absolutely massive amount of damage, and that damage comes from doing the leaping attack, which counts as a plunging attack as well. Now, I'm going to try using a little bit of pyromancy here, just to play it safe. Whoa! We gotta be careful. This should do it. There we go. So as you can see, the pyromancer excites the flame and then can literally just throw a ball of fire. So we've got two things from beating that boss. We've got a big Pilgrim's Key and a humanity. So let's take a look at the descriptions for both of those. Key to the inner door of the Undead Asylum main hall. Big key belonging to a chosen undead pilgrim. But this chosen undead knows not what this pilgrimage has in store. Other thing we got is humanity. Used to gain 1 humanity and greatly restore HP. Rare tiny black sprite found on corpses. Used to gain 1 humanity and restore a large amount of HP. This black sprite is called humanity, but little is known about its true nature. If the soul is the source of all life, then what distinguishes the humanity we hold within ourselves? But you don't know it yet. This is one of the most important things in the game. We'll, just like I've said a dozen times, we'll get to the importance of that later. Big Pilgrim's Key. We made it out. So this is what that knight failed to do, but we managed to do it. Good job. Go straight ahead. So that knight said that we had to ring the bell of awakening, and upon doing so, the fate of the undead thou shalt know. That thing we just picked up is a soul of a lost undead. Soul of a lost undead who has long ago gone hollow, used to acquire souls. Souls are the source of all life, and whether undead or even hollow, one continues to seek them. So this item is essentially just, it's souls that you can actually store as an item. When we saw that death, the description for the dark sign said that when you die, you lose all your humanity and your souls. That would be in the bottom right. We see 2,280. If we die, we lose those. But this is an item in our inventory which we wouldn't lose. So as we make our way up here, we can kind of see that this northern undead asylum really is corralled up to the north. Like it's nothing but mountains as far as the eye can see. When they say that the undead are corralled and led to the north, they weren't kidding. We really are. We're kind of at the end of everything. So first time players kind of walk up here scratching their heads thinking, well, what exactly is going on?
Only in the ancient legends it is stated that one day an undead shall be chosen. To leave the undead asylum in pilgrimage to the land of the ancient lords. Lordran.
Okay, so we are in Lordran now. In Lordran, level up and kindle at bonfires. We talked about in the Undead Asylum about how they contextualize a lot of the gameplay tutorials with those messages. It's interesting that they felt it was necessary to actually flash that on the screen, not as a message, just as a tutorial. In Lordran, level up and kindle bonfires. And we saw the location. It said we were at Firelink Shrine. So this is a place that has a lot of significance that we will thoroughly explore in the next episode. But before we do anything, we're just going to do the thing real quick and call it a day. Thank you so much for watching this first episode. In case you're wondering, we are going to be this insanely thorough for the rest of the playthrough. So I hope you have plenty of tasty bevs, lots of snacks, really comfy blankets, because we're in for the long haul. Let's do the thing and let's call it a night.